Good morning. Hello. Welcome. Welcome. I hope you are safe and healthy during this time. And good afternoon in Asia Pacific to our friends and colleagues over there. My name is Miguel Figueroa from UNWTO. I will be your host for this webinar. And also good morning here in in Spain, and to our friends and colleagues here, and some people that are getting up really early in America. I will go there in a second. So welcome all. We are just connecting some people, and we are just waiting for them to join in this time. So let me put together my screen. So as people join us, let me give you a little bit of the background of the webinar, and also walk you through the agenda for today. So from last year, we have been partnering and collaborating with IFC in different initiatives, and one of them is green investments, and more specifically, we are working in a hotel revitalization program, and we are trying to promote and encourage different countries and different aggregators and within the industry to promote the green finance. And that's why we are having this conversation and a series of conversations in the next months. So we are glad that you are here for the agenda of today, just to keep the time and be respectful of the people who start and connect earlier. The program is basically divided in three parts. We have the welcome remarks from Dr. Mario Harley, who is the CEO of PATA, who is joined with us here, and he will be giving us a little bit of welcome remarks and some words for the time being. And we have two presentations for today. I will be presenting some big pictures and some figures of the trends and challenges on investments this time. And then we have Koto from IFC, who will be sharing the main part of this presentation, some of the green finance mechanisms that we are talking today. And then the last part will be focusing on the Q&A. So for the people who are connecting, we are really appreciated if you can answer your questions through the Q&A section. Don't put it in the chat, so it will be specific for the Q&A. It would be great if you can do it. And we'll be filtering the questions, and we'll be passing to the panelists. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Dr. Mario Hardy, please.
Thank you, Miguel. Very good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, wherever you're around the world. Greetings from Bangkok. It's a great pleasure to be here with you, to just setting the scene for today's discussions and learning about activities that we can actually do and investments required for the recovery, essentially to restart travel, hopefully the sooner the better. I won't go into necessarily to too much numbers, because I think we all know how bad the situation is, but I will give just a few to put things in perspective as to where we are in this current pandemic and where actually we come from. Certainly the last 15 months have been a challenge for all of us. It's certainly been for me, and I'm sure it's been for each one of you and your respective family members, friends, and colleagues in your various organizations you work for. You know, none ever in my own career, and I'm sure for most of you, have we ever experienced something so dramatic as what we've experienced in the last 15 months. We all know friends and colleagues who have lost their jobs. We've seen many brands and businesses that we'd loved, that we admired, are actually closed and most likely will not be reopening in the coming month or years. Many brands are actually gone. Many businesses have disappeared. Small SMEs have disappeared in very large numbers. Back in April last year, PATA conducted a survey amongst 500 SMEs here in Asia. Already in April a year ago, 15% had closed their business permanently, with no intentions of returning to tourism, moving to other industries and sectors. 42% of these businesses only earn money for 2 to 4 months, which means by now they're also closed. But the most shocking number was 65% of the respondents were not prepared for any type of crisis at all. They had no crisis plans, communication plans, or readiness plan to face any type of crisis, let alone something of this nature. Now, we all know what followed and how difficult it's been for everyone. And it's difficult for a couple of reasons. This crisis is very different from other crises that I've certainly experienced, and I'm sure many of you have too, because it changes by the day. It moves at a phenomenal rate. You wake up one morning, everything sounds actually hopeful. And you wake up the next morning and everything seems really dramatic again. And it keeps changing back and forth, which makes things really difficult to predict the future as to how long it will take to recover. Now, we've given an attempt to do this, and I know that my friends at UNWTO have also done their own scenario planning. Luckily, our numbers matches quite well, so we're very close to each other, although we have different ways of countings. But essentially, when we look at the recovery over this year and the years to come, we estimate that here in Asia Pacific specifically, so travel into Asia Pacific and within the Asia Pacific region, that at the worst case scenario, into 2021, we expect about 6% in comparison to pre-COVID-19 in terms of visitor arrivals. At a median, about 11%, the best case scenario, maybe 21%. We look at 2022, and these numbers obviously starts to improve from the worst of 25% to the best of 57%. 2023, 48%, the worst case scenario, and the best case, 96%. Now, as I explained before, the nature of this crisis, it's very unpredictable. Things keep changing. So these numbers can end up being far better than we anticipated, or actually far worse than we anticipated, because things are progressing at different rates. Now, I'd like to stress one thing, and I will repeat this twice just to make sure you clearly understand. These figures I just gave you are a global perspective. And it's important you take note, it is global, because certain destinations will actually do better than others. The nature of the crisis is that the recovery will be slow, but it also be uneven. Some destinations will do far, far better than others. If I look just around me here in Asia, I could safely say that Singapore is doing pretty well in terms of their recovery. They will probably be amongst the first destination to actually reopen. Hong Kong, Chinese Taipei, and others are also doing quite well in that area, while others are actually way, way behind in terms of recovery. So why are we here today? Well, we're here today because in a time of crisis, there's also opportunities. And so I'd like to just quote someone. Sadly, I actually don't know who wrote this quote, but I think it's very relevant. Crisis energy is like uranium, a rare and powerful thing. It might not be something you would choose to seek out, but when it is forced upon you, use it to power your future. And essentially, let's use this time that we have during this crisis to get ourselves ready for a better future for tourism moving forward, a more sustainable one and a more environmentally friendly one. But in order to do this, we need support. Sure, we need financial support and assistance, but we also need guidance and support from either our respective governments and equally from the private sectors or institutions such as IFC and others to actually guide us in that direction, to assist us in doing something better. So I'm really looking forward to listen to both Miguel and Koto today to hear about some ideas that they have of activities that we can engage today, as most certainly specifically for the hospitality sectors, in order to have a better tourism industry forward. So thank you very much for your time today, and I look forward to listen to our guest speakers. Miguel, back to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mario. It was really nice to hear from you, especially from your personal experience and from the ground there, right? So it's different, like the data that I, for instance, manage and compare with I talk to people like you and other business is a different reality that we might not expect when we count from you. Thank you so much. Let me share my screen to go into the presentation really fast. Okay, so just to start, I just want to provide a narrative of where are we coming from, and as Mario was sharing, this is also an opportunity. And yesterday I was talking with people from Barbados, for instance. We had a meeting, and they were organizing by the Minister of Tourism there, and it was nice to see like they came together and they are trying to strategize beyond the recovery and the liquidity aspects of the funding that they are currently having. So it was really interesting to have other perspectives in the medium and the long term. So in order to do that for the Asia Pacific region, I just prepared this short presentation to show you like where are we coming from and where we could move from here. So this is a chart that you can see the tourism sector pre-COVID, right? So it was one of the sectors that was growing constantly over the last 10 years, since tourism is like a labor-intensive activity. It employs subsectors. We accounted for almost 12 to 16 sectors, from food, transportation, all the way to experience and even technology startups that are part of this sector. So the impact is massive, as Mario was sharing. And of course, we were hit by the pandemic. And as you can tell from the chart, it drops in terms of international tourist arrivals almost 75%. This data is up to February this year. And is unprecedented, as Mario was sharing. This never happened before. Even in other similar crises like SARS or like the global economic crisis in 2009, it drops like 0.5%, 4%, and the impact wasn't at all as is it not right now. So it's very, very complicated. And if you are within the business, of course, you can tell and witness with better illustrations that I could ever explain. If we go deeper into the investment kind of data, there is a highly correlation between the international tourist arrivals, of course, due to the labor-intensive nature of tourism. And if we see the data, for instance, from the Financial Times in regards greenfield investments from this past year, it dropped almost 75% as well, 73.2 to be exact. And of course, as Mario also well put it, the biggest countries, or the countries that have been hit the most, are the ones that are lagging behind. But of course, the ones that are better prepared, they are having, they have better chances, right? So it's a very uneven situation in this case. And the flows of capital, of course, are dropping when it comes to creation of new projects. And just to summarize this part that everybody knows, we are setting back our numbers on demand almost to the point of the 90s. We lost almost 1 billion people in international tourist arrivals, which represents the demand for the sector. The loss in export revenues are from 1.3 trillion. And for me, the most scary data here is the jobs that are at risk, right? It's almost 120 million jobs in the sector, which is very, very hard to understand. And of course, the crisis is different for every region, from every country, since they all have different strategies and economics or macroeconomics preparedness or readiness to do this. But at the end of the day, the recovery piece, it will be different for everybody. And there will be countries that are better off, and there will be other countries that need a lot of help during this time. So that is why our emphasis at the UNWTO is to promote these kind of conversations. But beyond that, we try to collaborate with organizations that are already doing amazing things locally or regionally, and we try to cultivate these collaborations in order to create specific projects. So just talking about opportunities at the beginning, just before the pandemic, we developed these investment guidelines to understand what is the demand and where are we going. And it was interesting because one of the biggest trends that we are seeing pre-pandemic, and now that was actually validated during the pandemic, is the new consumer behaviors, which is, I personally believe, this will be one of the main things and main drivers to lead to the recovery stage. Because as you know, most of these demand are millennials, are Generation Z in the next 10 years, and they are growing in a piece of 50 millions per year. From the data that we have at the UNWTO, it's expected that they will grow in a piece of 50 million increasingly international tourist arrivals per year. Most of these demand are, of course, native digitals. One of the biggest difference with other generations is that they are traveling more frequently. They travel 4 to 7 times per year, compared with other generations where they just travel 1 or twice per year. And of course, their travels and trips are shorter. They are looking for experience, and they are looking for authenticity, not just for the places and the offer that they go to, but also from the governments in regards of the security, data, and all that comes with the pandemic in regard to protocols, the data protection, health issues, and so forth and so on. One of the biggest characteristics of the demand is that they are looking for sustainable measures, sustainable offerings. When I talk to people from other platforms like Booking, for instance, they told me that the customers are looking for hotels that are with a green label, for instance. They are trying to see offers that they can actually protect the environment. So that is kind of one of the for me, the biggest accelerators of the pandemic. And if we take advantage of these consumer behaviors, especially in the recovery phase, will be great. In the same sphere, we have another big trend with the travel tech and the mobility startups, which are accelerating the transition towards greening. We had like a big amount of investments in the last 10 years. Even if we take out from the investment data, the big lumps of money that were towards these mobility, urban mobility, like the scooters and the bikes, still the travel and mobility sector have grown considerably. And from the data that we are aggregating, is interesting to see that there is different subsectors that the travel tech mobility are investing and is increasing. And in the last 5 years, for instance, we moved from the transportation and from the traditional booking platforms to events like the Zoom that you or we are using right now. There is a lot of startups focusing on food and beverage, healthcare, and other really good solutions that are not necessarily focused on the hotel and the booking platforms, but also they are trying to serve to different niches within the value chain of the tourism. And of course, in the last pandemic, we saw an explosion of these big startups, and the market capitalization, for instance, of Zoom reach even like the same amount of all the airlines combined, just to give you an idea of these investments. And that is one of the biggest opportunities that we can see. We have another project with IFC actually that we are working and trying to promote cooling solutions. And we are trying to find the best startups or the best technologies out there to offer solutions for the hotels in order to decrease their energy or increase the efficiency of energy in at least 20% OPEX. So those are kind of the good opportunities that this pandemic is bringing. And the other one that, of course, that is the reason that we are here today is related with the green finance and the green hotel revitalization. And last year, as I was mentioning in the beginning, we developed a series of webinars focusing on the EDGE certification. We are trying to find the different hotels and different markets for these kind of products that IFC is currently offering. And of course, trying to work with the governments to develop different incentives for the recovery, but also to encourage people and the sector to go green. So this is kind of like one of the biggest trends and drivers that we are seeing, and we are trying to make this as an opportunity to go back and to recover the sector. And as you can tell, as Mario was saying at the beginning, we have different scenarios. And the scenario that we're looking is kind of like this for us. This is globally. But beyond the scenario, I just want us to focus on the gap. Like, what can we do to fill this gap? And what can we do in the regions, in the clusters of hotels, in the governments, to fill this gap between the now and then. And I personally believe that green is one of these great opportunities to retrofit, to create different incentives, to create different products and services as we recover to a better future. And that is why we are promoting these conversations with governments so they can provide different regulations and they can ease the regulations for green investments. We are talking with financial institutions like the IFC and other private equity firms that are focusing on the space. And we are partnering with institutions like PATA that are providing knowledge and networks in this process. And of course, the startups that we are working and serving as well. But at the end of the day, we want to create this collaboration. One of the other big lessons from the pandemic is the collaboration. And I feel like everybody is willing to collaborate and to work together. And I feel like this is this sense of urgency is facilitating these conversations. And now the best visions will win, and we will move forward in this process. So to wrap up this part, of course, there are different financial mechanisms to do this. There's the direct investments that are, of course, are working with the governments, and they are developing already. There are local financial institutions, and there are institutions like IFC that are strengthening these organizations that are already on the field, which Koto will share a little bit about that. There are other aggregator models in which we help them to organize by clusters, and we work with organizations like PATA, associations of hotels, or sometimes directly with them in order to organize a better offer to create this demand for capital. And also we have been working with other organizations, for instance, that are developing green bond for hotels that goes to the capital markets. There's a lot to cover, of course. The main purpose of this webinar is to show you one of the projects that we are currently working with IFC, and I think the best person to explain that is Koto, because she is the specialist from IFC in this regard. So I will pass it to you, Koto, so you can take it from here.
Thank you, Miguel. Good afternoon, good morning, everybody. My name is Koto, and I work with the International Finance Corporation, headquartered in DC. First, I would like to thank UNWTO and Pato for this opportunity today. My aim today with this presentation is basically to introduce the project that we have been working on and to encourage all of you to participate once the product is available. So for those, next slide, please. So if you're not familiar with the IFC, just to give you a little bit of background, we are a member of the World Bank Group, but we work with the private sector in developing countries and less with governments, which is what the IBRD, the main part of World Bank Group, does. So just to make sure that we work, especially we are focused on solution for private sector development, and part of its mission is to create markets that support climate business, as Miguel has mentioned before. Personally, I am in a unit that mainly works with financial institutions, and my team, which is called the Upstream team, is a team that specializes in developing innovative ideas to address market gaps that we have identified. So that's a little bit of background on who we are and what we do. In the next slide, just to give you a little bit of background on our green building focus, IFC created its green building market transformation program to take a leadership role in encouraging a new paradigm where financial institutions, governments, the property sector, and the consumers all come together to benefit financially through the mainstreaming of green buildings. And the program addresses the gap in the market for an international global green building standard that offers a free software solution to help identify the most cost-effective solutions to design and build green and to unlock the potential for a new era of green construction and development. The four-part strategy supports diverting investment to green building through working with banks, financial institutions, investing directly to the building sector, also advising to governments on green building codes and incentives. And the fourth part is the EDGE certification program that I will explain a little bit more about later. So far, just to give you a little bit of number, IFC has mobilized over $4.5 billion in green building investments from its own account and also through syndicated loans, so with other investors. Out of that, 876 million, or about 20%, is through other financial institutions. So IFC, we're just trying to showcase that IFC believes in this business case for green buildings and how we can all benefit from this. And with this background, I would like to delve into the actual theme of today's presentation, which is the program that I have been working on. It's the Hotel Green Revitalization Program. The objective that we have, four main objectives. The first is to mitigate the effects of COVID-19 and enable hotels and other tourism industries to access financing and preserve jobs through providing counter-cyclical financing. That is the main point. And then while we are at that, the second point is that we would like to help hotels improve energy efficiency so that the hotels can build back better through reduction of operating costs brought by the more energy efficient operations. And then by that, the third point is it will help reduce the carbon footprint because the tourism industry needs to reduce absolute greenhouse gas emissions per room by 66% from 2010 levels by 2030, and then 90% by 2050 to stay in line with the Paris Agreement. And the last but not least, the fourth is to stimulate utilization of idle capacity, sort of going back to what was mentioned before, sort of taking this crisis, changing into an opportunity, I guess. So to turn this idle capacity to utilize this for renovation, to build a foundation for for a stronger business model in the longer term. So with those 4 objectives, what does the project actually entail? So after we with this idea, we have conducted extensive diagnostics across the globe with the help of UNWTO, and we have structured the program as shown on the screen. The program consists of country-level initiatives and promote private sector investments in the tourism industry with requirements to retrofit hotels towards green buildings. So 2 parts, one is the financial support and the other is a non-financial support. The financial support part will mainly be ISC working with financial institutions and providing them risk-sharing facilities to banks with a portfolio of hotels. So FC will be working with the financial institutions and not necessarily directly investing into the hotels. But by working with the financial institutions, we hope to facilitate banks to allow the hotels, the borrowers, to reschedule existing debt in their portfolio and to address financing needs brought by COVID and the pandemic. In order to be enrolled in this program, the hotels must meet certain eligibility criteria that we are now establishing. The main component would be that the hotel is operating a certain number of years, and also we're in good standing financially pre-COVID. So there are ratios and numbers that will be attached to it that we are still in discussion with, but once you meet that criteria, you would be able to contact your financial institutions and be enrolled in that program. So for the non-financial support, mainly 3 parts. First is the building the capacity for hotels for environment and social standards, and then also with green principles. So to help hotels learn more about these standards, global standards, and how to meet them. And then with the S tools that I'll be explaining a little bit later, existing edge tools that we offer currently mainly focus on new establishments, but this program is focused on existing buildings, and then we are developing a slightly modified tool to help retrofit these existing buildings to a greener standard. And then thirdly, the Edge advisory team that we have at IFC will be able to provide support to hotels in assessing what kind of energy efficient initiatives that they can take and how much it would cost and how much they would be able to save at the end. So with that, with the program is after conducting the diagnostics, we have developed a structure for this program, and it has been gone through the process of internal approvals, and we are in the stage where we are hammering out the very detailed criteria and other risk sharing agreements that we can sign with the banks, and currently looking for financial institutions in multiple areas and countries of the world that we can partner with to execute and implement this program. So in a little bit more detail, to reiterate, I guess, to the IFC in this program would mainly be working with financial institutions, but this approach helps us to further reach and the smaller hotels, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to directly invest in them because each size project may be too small. But by working through financial institutions, we hope to reach as many hotels in need as possible. So the risk sharing facility will be with the local financial institutions combined with the advisory services. And then with that support, the banks will all lend to the hotels and the projects in their country. And then the project, while they are at it, they will be able to apply and the hotels will be able to apply and reschedule loans and use the part of the loans that they receive for retrofit greening. So in order to install new facilities or change slightly their reception or contact free or anything like that, we would require the hotels to clear certain milestones towards greening in the first 24 months in order to stay in this program. So we are not necessarily setting a cap for what percentage of the loans that they receive have to be towards greening, but we need those hotels in the portfolio to abide by our standards in terms of reaching these EDGE milestones, or other greening milestones, but preferably EDGE. So we are sure that some of the loans that have been lent to the hotels are being used to greening and to improve their energy efficiency and lowering their operating costs in the long term. And so to reiterate, the next slide, this is a very simple math. And this program we think it's important for the hotels, and it could be useful to the hotels because we want to make sure that the facilities have enough liquidity to survive. The hotels have enough liquidity to survive these trying times. And we also want to use this unprecedented times when most sites are closed or underutilized to take a look inward and understand how to return to a better, new and better normal post-COVID. This will include looking into how to maximize your profits by accessing finance. And then profits, of course, is revenue minus cost, to put it simply, and revenue will depend on the willingness of tourists to return to travel. But we do know, and Miguel has mentioned this earlier, but the travelers are increasingly looking for green destinations. And then when tourists return and they have many options to choose from, you can differentiate yourself with the green label, with the EDGE certificate. We also want to make sure that you're improving your properties through modernization and through technology, such as key cards or self-check-in. And we want to help you drastically cut your operating costs through making your facilities more energy efficient. So there were trainings done with UNWTO, and in that, there's a link at the end of this presentation for the YouTube video, but we showed many examples of how operating costs can be cut back through smart and sensible measures with very attractive payback periods. From this on, to give you a little more overview on why greening is important, I'm quickly introducing the materials that my colleagues in the EDGE team has prepared on behalf of them. Any questions on the details of the EDGE product and how to use these apps and programs, I'm happy to direct you to the relevant team members as a follow-up. Just to give you so there's a report called the Business Case for Sustainable Hotels, where ISC collaborated with the International Tourism Partnership to produce the business case for sustainable hotels. We identified data-driven approach to sustainability in this sector, and includes these 6 points shown in the slide. You can access the full paper online if you're interested, but the few pieces out of this report is in the next slide. For example, the utility bills. Sorry, next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. And then so the utility bills are a large percentage of the operating costs. So addressing this would help drastically with lowering these costs. And the owner of a conventionally built hotel typically spends more than $2,000 per guest room each year on energy and water consumption, so which is about 6 to 20% of the operating costs. So the benefit of a resource efficient hotel only increases with time, and as energy prices often rise faster than consumption. So that's one component that's mentioned in the report. Another is in the next slide. Shows that once you invest in greening, the payback period is about 2 to 4 years for most measures, depending on what kind of improvements you decide to do, but it will help you save costs significantly. I'm going to how to sort of introducing what EDGE is. So it's a free software, it doesn't cost you anything, that you can go online and you can see the return on investment for resource efficiency measures. So it's a web-based software that can be used on your computer, mobile, or tablet, and it helps you pick options in energy, water, and materials, and helps you calculate what kind of costs and returns you would be getting from these improvements. I think the key part is that it's basically free and it's very easy to use. And again, as I mentioned, for retrofitting, the Edge team is currently developing a slightly modified tool for this, which should be available within this year at the latest. So we are hoping to leverage that in our program as well. So just to give you a little bit more material to look at on Edge, UNWTO and IFC has done a joint training on Edge, which you can find from this YouTube link. And then there are trainings available from the Edge team as well. So these are the services that IFC is providing in terms of Edge. And then hopefully with this support, the Hotel Green Revitalization Program will be in operation in the next 3 to 4 months, depending on the availability of our partnering financial institutions in the country. But that's where we are at, and I hope this presentation was informative enough to interest you in participating. Thank you. Back to you, Miguel.
Thank you so much, Koto. Really appreciate it. I have to switch rooms. No, thank you so much. I totally forgot to mention that IFC is highly committed with this project. And just a show of that, Koto is at DC right now, and she has to get up really early to be with us. So I forgot to honor that, Koto. Thank you so much for waking up so early. Appreciate it. Yeah, so I'm checking at the questions at the chat right now, so we can answer some of those. Like one of the questions that somebody asked in the chat is like, is these facilities are open just for Southeast Asia, or there is also other places that you will be doing it?
Yes, so it is available globally, not only in Southeast Asia, but also Caribbean, basically we're trying to target countries with high reliance on tourism as percentage of GDP. So that's definitely our target countries. Due to available funding to make this program more viable, we are currently focusing on IDA PSW countries. That's listed in the World Bank website. But that has been expanded to Caribbean countries in light of COVID. And so we are trying to cover as many countries as possible where there's a need.
Great. Then I'm reading two different channels, the question that we are being bombarded right now, but I'm trying to also gather into very general questions. And they are asking like, what are the requisites and those milestones that you mentioned so they can actually be eligible to apply?
Okay, so first big disclaimer, these criteria is still being developed and we're discussing with our MAS colleagues, which is the Manufacturing, Agriculture and Services colleagues that there's another unit within IFC. Yes, we are a big organization. But so far, I think the requirements in order to be eligible for this program would mainly be around the years of operation, and also the debt service coverage ratios pre-COVID, and also so those are probably going to be two key components of the eligibility criteria, and also the milestones are mainly going to be around. So with Edge, there is a stage where you design what you are going to do with your retrofit, and then that design you can submit that design online, obviously, and then get a pre-certification. So within the first 24 months of the program, we want to see at least that. We're thinking that we want to see at least that pre-certification, and also some parts of the actual construction. And then once the construction is completed, you will submit again for the actual certification. So what we definitely want to see is that the hotel intends to do the retrofit, which will be shown by the design, and then that they have actually worked on the construction. So those two will be the main components, I think, so far to be the milestones.
Thank you. Thank you. And yeah, and as a disclaimer, you were mentioning, of course, this is a fairly new project, and that's why we are trying to take the word out there, and all these kind of questions that we might have, it helps to improve the program and to iterate the programs as we go. There's a very interesting question. I think, let me read it from my phone. That is somebody sending to the YouTube. I think it says,
sorry,
can you walk us?
Sorry, I forgot to mention one more thing. Sorry, in terms of eligibility criteria, we're targeting small and medium-sized hotels. So we are not at the moment targeting 5-star hotels or luxury hotels or major chains, because they're large enough for IFC to directly invest if necessary, but we're also trying to reach the small and medium and maybe even the smaller hotels in the rural areas, or so that's another criteria that's very important. Sorry, thank you.
No, it's great. It's great to clarify. There is another question here from YouTube, I think. It says, do you have any specific case study on how much these improvements increase the cost of the services, and if affects the business model of the hotel? In other words, like all these retrofittings and all these improvements will affect the business model, so they will actually charge more and it will be more expensive for the hotel?
So the idea is that we will help cover those costs, right? And then, so we're trying to minimize the transfer of the retrofitting costs to the customers. And then I think the Edge team would be maybe in a better position to answer this in terms of what the long-term returns of. So maybe initially there might be significant costs incurred, but in the long term you would be getting your money's worth, because you end up lowering your operating costs. So I at the moment do not really imagine and I haven't really seen any cases in that sense.
Yeah, and just to support that, last year when we were having the trainings with Rosmir, is interesting the position of IFC, because he said, like, at the beginning, people think it's expensive, right, to retrofit, to create all these incremental changes and to go greening, and people assume that it's expensive in the short term, which sometimes it is, but in the long run, like based on the studies that you have done, is totally different, and increase or decrease in this case actually in about 20 to 35%, I believe. So that is something to consider as well. And the other thing to emphasize is, once we are talking to the customers, and actually the pandemic is showing that there are high demand now for not just for protocols of safety and healthy measures, but also for greening. And that is also a big trend that different platforms are working around. And these kind of programs will help you to create an unfair advantage compared with other brands, and position, and to have a better message on that as well.
Also, I think we're trying to work with booking.coms and other online booking platforms for hotels to show these green standards as sort of a component where customers can see and decide based on it. So that's another thing that we're exploring.
Yeah, let me, I don't know if you might answer this, but it says, like, do you know any, what are the banks and local institutions in Thailand that you are working currently?
So we're not working with one specific bank yet. IFC has offices in Bangkok too, and we are working with our regional teams to identify any banks that might be interested in product. So not one specific bank at the moment, no.
Perfect. Yeah, there are a lot of questions, like 4 or 5 questions here in the chat regarding the certification that you mentioned, like the Edge, I believe. So can you a little bit explain more about that, please?
So I guess the certification is it's twofold. So as I mentioned earlier, Using the online tool, you'll be able to pick and choose what kind of modification or improvements you want to do. And then that once that is a sort of a package, and that will be a design of your retrofitting, and then the app will show you how much it would cost to do that and how much you'll be saving. Depending on that, you can decide what to do. And then once that design is firmed up, then that is going to be submitted for pre-certification. And then the certification has 3 stages, the third stage being the most effective, I guess, which is 0 carbon. And then the second stage is, I think it was 50% reduction. Sorry, 40% or more on-site energy savings. And then the lowest hanging fruit, level 1 certification, is 20% or more savings. So depending on how much energy you have saved, Edge allows you to calculate that because it has an extensive database on what measures will result in what kind of energy saving and greenhouse gas emission reduction. So depending on how much you're saving, there are stages of, it's kind of like the bronze, silver, gold thing, but there are levels of EDGE certification that you can apply for.
Thanks. Just to switch gears a little bit, I'm personally curious about Mario. What are your thoughts on this, since you are there and you know very well the industry? Just to give a break to Koto.
Sure. I guess it's more of a comment or a reflection, and I wouldn't mind actually hearing from either of you, is that, I suspect there are people who are actually listening today and saying, yeah, this sounds like a great initiative, love to be part of it, but my business is really suffering at the moment. I can't even pay my own staff. I've got barely any staff left in my business. How will I be able to take on such an initiative while actually I can't even operate at the moment? The borders in Thailand here are closed. We've received some good news in the last couple of days that Phuket will be reopening fairly soon under certain restrictions, and quarantines will be relaxed a little bit, but we're still many months away from this. And so I guess the question, as I said, I'm not sure it's a question or a comment, but I'd like to hear about your feedback, your reflection on this, because I'm sure that's what many people are thinking.
So if I could address that really quickly, the idea of this program is, the core idea is build back better, obviously. But the point is that because of COVID, we will understand that a lot of hotels are in immediate liquidation crisis and they need that cash. And so what we are doing is, by giving the 24 months, sort of like a grace period until they start greening, we are allowing that loan to be used for any paying your staff, like just to survive, basically. So we're hoping that that structure will give leeway to hotels to survive at that moment and sustain their business and keep their employment. And then once, I saw Miguel's graph where it's supposed to recover in 2012, 22 and 23. And if that happens, then hopefully they'll have the capacity to actually start towards implementing these initiatives towards greening. So the idea is that we are allowing these loans to be used for refinancing and other financing needs at the moment.
Oh, this is brilliant. I think it's this is probably music to people's ears at the moment who are listening in to this. I do have another question for you, Koto, and my apologies if you already mentioned this and I missed it. Is the program available only for retrofitting existing property, or is it also available for new property development?
So this one, we are only focusing on existing buildings for retrofitting. For new buildings, we have another program within IFC called Magic. So that also uses the EDGE certificate, but that focuses on new buildings, including hotels. So we're trying to not overlap within ourselves, basically.
Good. And if you allow me another question, Miguel, this one is for you.
No, please. Yeah. Please.
I know that I see that UNWTO is very active on social media. I read all your posts, and I see that you have many other activities that you're doing in a similar field, and you mentioned some of those before when you presented in other areas beyond what you're doing with IFC, for example. So what are UNWTO's priority in 2021 moving forward with sustainability initiative?
Yeah, there's actually a crisis committee that is meeting next week. We will have an updated to the priorities that we have, but in a nutshell, we are focusing, of course, in job recovery and to safeguard all the current investments. We are focusing on greening, and we are trying to support initiatives with innovation and technology as well as an opportunity in the pandemic. And then there's a big also initiatives on education, because if of course there's a big issue of liquidity right now for the businesses, but others are trying to mitigate that with some incentives or some programs with the governments. And part of those incentives are focusing, for instance, on training and education and upskills, for instance, for the hotels. So we are launching an initiative as well on that regard. But the three main things are sustainability, innovation, and education from the priorities. And just go a little bit back to what you were asking, which are, I mean, what happened with the hotels that are barely making it, right? So there are other initiatives that IFC, because is a big institution, that they are working in different other programs, locally and regionally. And there's, I think, different levels, right, in this recovery stage. And I feel like the main idea for us is to try to have these conversations to see and identify these clusters, these pockets, these niches of organizations like yourself and the hotels, to see how can we help and support them better to make them know and to allow them to access and facilitate these initiatives. Because I was talking with somebody from the Caribbean yesterday, and and for instance the IDB bank there, they were saying we have these facilities, but people don't know about it. We have these facilities in the beginning of the pandemic, but we barely are receiving applications. So I feel like sometimes we assume a lot of those products, those services, but people don't know. I mean, it's sadly as that, because as you well put it at the beginning, the nature of this pandemic is so uncertain, and people, of course, at the beginning were focusing on survive and the healthy measures. But I feel like we are passing that point to understand now, like the economic recovery and what that means for us and for the sector, right? So just to iterate a little bit on that as well. Let me read to the other questions if we have. So we're okay with the time. Yeah, there's a lot of questions regarding the presentations. Yeah, we will put it in our website in the link where the landing page was. And there's another question from Sri Lanka. Yeah, but it's the same questions like the presentations. I think we cover, I think, most of the questions. I just want to take this time to
I see one where shouldn't necessarily be a certification by Edge or a local certification. Just to address that quickly. We encourage the Edge certification because it's a very good IFC product, obviously, but if not Edge, I know there are leads and other standard certifications, but because of the global nature of this platform project, we would most likely, that's still also being discussed, but we will most likely only allow global standards, international standards, rather than local.
Yeah, thank you, Koto. Yeah, that's very important. Of course, we encourage that, but the Edge is a very robust, system, and as long as you are certifying, you are in compliance with other standards which are global, you can totally work with us. I just want to take this moment to thank you all for your time. Koto, appreciate so much your effort.
No, thank you for having me.
Mario, thank you so much as always. It's very nice to talk to you. Are very insightful. I really appreciate my team behind scenes, Tihara, Ismael for your time and effort, and all my teams in UNWTO, and of course the team in PATA as well. We'll be in touch, and we'll be sending you some emails regarding these presentations and the next coming up activities. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.